Hi, I wanted to do a quick video since we talked about one on the law of demand, another video talking about the law of supply, where demand is talking about consumers and how consumers are willing to pay. When prices go up, consumers want to consume less. The law of supply is largely dealing with producers and firms, people who are producing things, selling things in the marketplace, and firms that are offering goods and services. And the law of supply, like the law of demand, is also very simple. It says as prices go up, producers and firms are typically willing, all other things being held equal, as prices go up, firms want to sell more. As prices go up, the more they'll sell, the more these firms make in profit and revenue. So as they see prices going up, they want to take advantage of that and offer more and more into the marketplace. So as prices go up, they will attempt to sell more and take advantage of that and increase supply. Maybe as prices go up, more firms will enter the market. Maybe they'll say, hey, there's a big boom in this. Prices are going up. I should jump into it and sell this too. Maybe prices will keep going up. Maybe new firms will enter this market. Again, this makes very intuitive common sense. As prices go up, businesses will want to take advantage of that, sell more, and that might draw more entrants into the marketplace. So let's take a look at how this looks graphically. I've written out the law of supply here. As prices rise, consumers will be willing to supply a larger quantity of goods and services into the marketplace. Remember, economics is easy. You only have to learn half of it. The other half follows from that. As prices fall, producers would be willing to sell a smaller quantity of goods and services into the marketplace. As prices drop, we might see firms say, this really isn't worth it anymore to sell this. I'm not making as much. Maybe I should exit this market. The law of supply and demand works in both directions. So again, as we did with demand, we can put a curve here. We can draw our axis with 0 here. Again, we put price on our vertical axis and the quantity in the marketplace on our horizontal axis. And we're talking about supply. So if the price is relatively low or high, and our quantity being relatively low or high as we get out away from the origin, if the price of something is relatively low, it's relatively inexpensive, there's not a lot of money to be made in this market, we might expect not many people selling it and very few quantities sold. But then as that price begins to go up, we would also expect that quantity to go up. So at a higher price point here, we would expect to see quantity increase as well, like this. And as that price continues to go up, we would see that quantity continue to go up, and we see this sort of direct relationship between prices and the amount sold in the marketplace. And again, as we did with demand, we can look at the elasticity of supply. This can be relatively elastic or relatively inelastic. When we talked about demand, we said that consumers that are very attuned to prices and change their behavior a great deal based on prices, that market would be elastic. Elastic because they change a great deal. We can also look at supply and as elasticity. So our supply curve slopes up, but we might look at a supply curve, for instance, that slopes up very, very steeply. This supply curve is sloping up, and it's relatively inelastic, because what we see here is we might be at this point where prices are relatively high, and we contrast that to this point where prices are relatively lower, and we see that firms decrease the quantity, but not by much. This is the amount they've decreased the quantity, but the price change has been very, very large. In this case, firms haven't changed their behavior very much. We would say that this is inelastic. We might also see a demand curve that slopes up very, very slowly like this. This would be an example of a elastic demand curve, where if we draw our line over here and another out here in blue, there has been a very small increase in prices, but a very large increase in quantity. In this case, a small increase in prices has caused firms and consumers to want a great deal more. Probably many more firms have entered this, or firms have put a great deal more on sale. So like demand, supply can be relatively inelastic or relatively elastic, and we see this in the steepness of their supply curves. Remember, D, demand, down, demand curve slope down, D, demand, down, supply curves slope upward. Likewise, with supply curves, we talked about the difference in a quantity demanded and a change in demand. We can put price and quantity on our axis as usual, and we can put in a basic supply curve here. And we know at different points of price, producers and firms will offer certain amounts of quantity for sale in the marketplace. A change in the price of the good and service is just a move along this demand curve to a different point. A change in anything else will result in a shift to a new demand curve. So let's say what we're talking about is automobiles here. This can be cars. Let's say, for example, the price of steel goes up a great deal. Steel becomes much, much, much more expensive. Most cars are made out of steel. So the price of their input prices has increased dramatically. That increase in price might cause car makers to offer less, so the supply curve would move up and to the left, or the supply curve would shrink. And we see here at the same price for the car, now firms are offering considerably less because their resource price, the cost to make the car, has increased dramatically, and they're making less off the car, so they're selling less of them. This would be a decrease in demand based on this change in the input prices of what it takes to make the car. Likewise, supply can increase. What if there's a new technology that comes available that makes it much easier to manufacture cars? It's much easier, maybe it's much cheaper, much faster. Making cars is much easier. They can make them faster. We would see an increase in supply. And that's what we're illustrating here in blue. Now, at this same price, firms would be willing to sell considerably more. And we would see them producing at this price. So we see, and these should be quantity, that firms can shift their supply to different curves. So a change in price alone is going to be a change in supply. That's going to be a change in the quantity supplied. A change in anything other than price is going to result in a shift to a new supply curve, and that's what we call a change in overall supply. So like demand, we have elasticity and inelasticity, where elasticity means that firms and producers are very reactive to price changes. Inelastic means firms and producers are not as elastic to price changes. Also, we can see a change in price is a change in quantity supplied, and a change in anything else, like the prices of the inputs that go into goods, or changes in technology, market disruptions, large market disruptions. Maybe they can't get the parts and things they need. Changes in overall taxes and government policy could shift to a new demand curve up or down. So this is how the law of supply works. And again, understand that the only thing that has to occur for supply and demand to work like this is for us to accept two very simple propositions. Number one, in demand, as prices go up, people want less of that thing. That makes sense. And number two, as prices go up, firms want to sell more of it to take advantage of the higher prices. That makes reasonable sense. From those two given facts, we can understand a great deal of market behavior as to what's being offered and what's being purchased. Thanks for watching again, and as always, let me know if you have any questions.